Welcome to another weekly Forex forecast for week 36. We had a few weeks risk on and see now a change in momentum. We will start on the DXY as usual on the weekly time frame. And we can clearly see here last week that we had a very strong retrace candle from an area of interest here, and we retraced more than 50% of the previous week. We can see that here, and closed almost full body. Going down to the 4-hour, and we had multiple chances to continue a sell-off. We had a nice consolidation here, where initially it looks like it might continue to sell off. It didn't. It reached another area of interest here. It did not sell off. Instead, it's still in a momentum run to the upside. So for next week, I'm looking for dollar long plays. Moving on to Euro US dollar on the weekly time frame, we have the same picture, just inverse. Of course, we have a very strong weekly bearish candle coming from an area of interest, although we left the gap to the next higher value area, but we are at the moment in a potential momentum run and a reversal. So therefore, on the lower time frame, I'm looking for a continuation short. We move straight to the 1-hour time frame. We see we had here quite an undecided area of price action where we were entering the higher time frame value area. Towards the end of the week, we finally broke out. So we had a breakout, an initial small consolidation, which did not give any clean entry for a short. And what I'm looking now is just the next smaller consolidation to enter a short for continuation. Next, Australian dollar, US dollar. Here we don't see that strong momentum candle, so it's still possible for a continuation long. We have multiple value areas fairly close by. However, we see here we lost momentum after these 3 weeks very strong bullish momentum, and are now in an area where price could potentially turn around. We go down to the 4-hour time frame. We were looking for a long play. Actually, I did play a long here in this area early last week, which ended up in a break even. I covered that in the trade review video, and I'm now looking for a continuation to the downside, preferably. So we do have a 1, 2, 3 kind of expanding structure into this value area here, and then started to sell off with the first initial consolidation, and are now in a very strong, we had a very strong impulsive run to the downside towards the end of the week, and are now on the low of the structure. So we have two options. Preferably, I'd like to see a bigger structured flag here to enter a short. However, if I see that DXY is starting to sell off again and price moves impulsively over this high and starts to form a bull flag continuation, of course I will change my bias and would enter a long play. Next is New Zealand dollar, US dollar. It's a very similar picture. However, we ended the week bullish. It's a bullish doji with a slightly bigger body. So we are in an area of interest here, tapped in a small area of interest. We have a 1, 2, 3 structure and are in a fairly good area for a short. Going down straight to the 1-hour time frame, we have a similar picture here. I was also looking for a long play early last week, covered that as well in the trade review video, and are now in a kind of undecided area. So we see that price is losing momentum, and it did tap into a higher time frame value area and is now tickling down. So it is still possible that price will break up to the upside to clear the higher time frame value areas. So therefore, I'm waiting for a clear confirmation. The minimum I need is a break below the middle part of this structure here, and then some form of smaller continuation flag pattern for a short entry. Australian dollar, Canadian dollar is slightly undecided as well. We are in no man's land kind of, so there is nothing to the left where we can say, yeah, this is an area where price could, or where it makes sense for price to turn around. So therefore we have two options to consider. I'm not clearly biased on this pair, so I will just react based on what price action is giving me. I'm going straight down to the 1 hour time frame. Last week this pair was on watch for a long. We did not retest this previous small high here. We had a 1, 1, 2, and I was looking here for the third touch. We did not get that. Instead, price moved slightly up again and then started to sell off towards the end of the week. So since the structure is bigger now, I need a bit more confirmation. So preferably, I'm still slightly leaning to the long side. So I would like to see price tapping into this area here, retrace, and then give me some form of a smaller, lower time frame continuation pattern to enter along. However, if I see that price breaks impulsively below, closes below, and then starts to form a continuation bear flag pattern below this high, and that's basically below the whole structure, I would consider entering a short. Next is Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar on the weekly time frame. We see here we are still in a momentum run to the downside. We came from a higher time frame value area. We finished it with the 1, 2, 3 structure into this higher time frame and had very nice reversal pattern here on top. An initial here consolidation on the weekly, and are now still in a momentum run to the downside. So I'm looking for price to finish a third week short to minimum the low of the middle structure here. Going straight to the 1 hour. We already had an entry. I missed that because this pair was not on watch last week for me. Price started to form a continuation pattern just on top of the low from the higher time frame area of interest, and we had a nice 1, 2, 3 with 2 high test 1 hour high test candles, which would justify an entry here for a short. I did not see that since it was not on my watch. We do now start to form a small consolidation here below the middle low here, and would still have enough room to manage it just to the low of the structure, and of course are looking for a bigger trade to the downside. This could be an early Asian session trade because it's Australian dollar, New Zealand dollar, would make sense, and this would be a trade I will monitor on the 15 minutes. We do see we have a very small liquidity point here, which is just around, actually it's exactly on the low of the middle, on the middle low of the structure, and I'm looking now for finishing of a bear flag pattern to enter a short here. Moving on to Euro New Zealand dollar. Euro New Zealand dollar is still in a downtrend, in a very strong momentum run. We closed almost full body last week. We have 2 very strong bearish candles in a row, so it would make sense for price to at least tap the next smaller area of interest or finishing the move down to the low. We also have 2 small gaps here to this previous area of interest, so it would make sense for price to finish this move before we then change bias. So I do prefer shorts on this pair. It looks already, the structure on the 1 hour time frame looks already very well developed. I did not get an entry here. It was not on close watch for me last week. We have a liquidity point here. We did not close the gap here. So if price comes up, if price moves up one more time, the structure is already slightly more complex. So I would like to see price tapping into this liquidity point and then giving me a lower time frame continuation pattern for a short, or price just continues to drop early next week on Monday morning during Asia session, and then is giving me some form of a small hover here, which would also justify an entry to a short. Euro Swiss francs on the weekly time frame, we also see it's kind of undecided. I tend more to the downside, especially if we might change the bias to risk off again, that would then lead to the Swiss francs becoming slightly stronger and euro might sell off again. We still have room to fill the wick here. And we see that this very strong initial momentum after tapping into this low here did not sustain, and price started to roll over. So on the lower time frame here, on the 1 hour, I'm looking for price to finish this structure. We have a small liquidity point here, which is actually a small continuation pattern here, and then price moved into the area of interest here, which was this low to the left, and then started to move up. Initially it looks like it has quite momentum, but going to the daily, we can see that we ended on a very big wick. Still bullish though, so we will see. However, if price is finishing this structure here and is giving us a clear second base somewhere in this area and then moving up one more time, I would definitely enter a short in this area, closing the gap here into this liquidity point here, because that would be very deliberate price action for one more last leg down. Pound New Zealand dollar on the weekly time frame, 2 weeks very bearish price action in a row. We are coming from an area of interest here, fully retraced it initially, have still left the gap to the higher time frame value area, are in a very strong momentum run at the moment, looking for price to finish at least the last leg into this middle section here, or even then to the next area of interest further down. Going down to the 1 hour time frame, we have a similar picture than with Euro New Zealand dollar before. The structure looks already fairly well developed. So we had a very long sideways consolidation here. We had Pound New Zealand dollar quite a while on watch already for a continuation short. We did not get any entry. Price moved around and formed a more complex volume accumulation here, but finally broke out impulsively and is now starting to form, or did already form, a nice continuation pattern just below all this volume here. So we are looking for a continuation short. There was a short trade here which I've missed. I covered that also in the trade review video, and I'm looking now for a next better entry. I don't expect price to come up all the way again to form a much bigger structure here, because we are already kind in a momentum run. So I'm looking for price to break below this small structure and giving me a lower time frame continuation pattern to enter the short in this area here. Pound Swiss francs next is against the overall bias. Pound Swiss francs for me looks still more bullish than bearish. We were tapping with this very long wick into an area of interest here 4 weeks ago, and we had 2 weeks in a row ending on a very strong wick. They were both bearish though, but it looks still like we have an initial first impulsive move, consolidation, and then we are ready for another move to the upside. So this looks more like a 1, 2, 3 for me. Going down to the 4 hour time frame, we see here we have already quite a big structure here. We had an initial run, which was an impulsive move on the daily time frame, and are now in a sideways consolidation and forming a bigger continuation pattern. We have a small liquidity point here and are now forming a bigger structure, and I'm looking for a 1, 2, 3 into this liquidity point for a continuation long. So lastly, Swiss francs Japanese yen. I'm moving down to the 4 hour time frame. We see price is still undecided. However, we have a small liquidity point here and we did not retest this previous low here. And price is forming a continuation pattern to the downside. We did not sell off here. We had a 1, 2, 3 initially with very nice price action, but we did not follow through. Instead, price came up one more time, and for me it looks more like we might scoop up again, tap into this previous low here, and since this structure is already more complex, I'm waiting for price to tap into this area, retrace, and giving me some form of a continuation on a lower time frame to then enter short. This is more like a wild card because it's already a more complex structure, but price action right now from the positioning looks interesting, and if I get a proper confirmation on the lower time frame, I'm willing to try another short. I tried a very similar short already last week on New Zealand dollar yen, which did not work out even though positioning was good. So yeah, that's it for the week. See you next week. Bye bye.